Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another installment of our virtual Women on Wednesdays. I'm Betsy Fisher-Martin, the Executive Director of the Women in Politics Institute at American University. To those of you new to one of our events, WPI is a nonprofit and nonpartisan institute in AU's School of Public Affairs that aims to close the gender gap in political leadership. We offer academic and practical campaign training, and we facilitate research and discussions like this on women in politics. Tonight, we are excited to have with us two women also working hard to close the gender gap in politics. They've been on the front lines of this effort with Emily's List, with their focus, of course, being on supporting and electing Democratic pro-choice women. They've also just written a book. It's not even on the bookshelves yet, but we're getting a sneak peek tonight, and it's called Run to Win: Lessons in Leadership for Women Changing the World. So we are thrilled to welcome Emily's List President Stephanie Schriock and Emily's List Vice President of Communications, Christina Reynolds. Thank you both for being here.
Well, thank you, Betsy, for having us. We're thrilled.
I want to let everybody know before we start that we are going to save some time for questions. So if you will just go to the Ask the Question tab at the bottom of your screen, and you can put a question there, and you can also upvote other people's questions that you might be interested in as well. And you can also pre-order a copy of the book in that green button there at the bottom of your screen. And a replay of this will be available at the same link that you registered right after if you want to share any of it with friends or rewatch it. So welcome, guys. I want to spend some time, of course, talking about the current political climate. But I first want to talk a bit about the book, which is really packed with advice and wisdom, and get a sense from you guys. What was your goal in writing this book, and what do you aim to tell people?
Well, I'll start, and I'm just also, Betsy, seriously, thank you so much for doing this. This is the first time Christina and I have had an opportunity to talk about the book together. So we're really excited to do this. It's been an honor to be working with Christina, who I work with every day to elect Democratic women to office. But on this project, it's been very, very cool. I also want to note that I love Women on Wednesdays. Great title.
Thank you.
At Emily's List, we say Tuesdays are for the ladies.
Yes.
Because those are the days we win. So I just wanted to share that with all
stuff.
of you.
We'll play Wednesdays too.
Yeah.
But we love yes, we can have all the days, actually. Let's just do that. But thank you so much. And we love that we've had this opportunity to put this book together. It started really as the wave of women that were coming to Emily's List, starting after the 2016 election of Donald Trump, signing up saying, hey, I want to run for office. I don't know what office. I don't know how to do this. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to do this. And at first we were like, oh, this is interesting. And then we're like, oh, this is a lot of women and they're coming. And then they started running. And we were able to, as an organization, to build out an entire program called Run to Win, where we were able to educate women along the way. And then also recruit and get women in key seats around the country, particularly as we were fighting to take back the House majority as Democrats. And relatively early in the cycle, earlier than I think my staff really wanted me to say this, I believed that the Democratic women, the women could take back the majority on their own because we had so many great women candidates. Yes, some good men won too, and I'm glad for that. But we were really shooting for 23. And in that, Christina and I got talking, and we're like, these stories of these women they're extraordinary. And they were, in so many cases, unique to the stories that we've had in the past. Veterans, nurses, women who had never pondered running for office before had jumped in and were running for Congress, some of which who contacted us, like Chrissy Houlihan, on an info email with her resume, just saying, hey, I think I'd like to run. And we look her up. I mean, her resume is impressive, by the way. And we're like, wait a second, you should run for Congress. And I think she thought we were crazy. Thankfully, not too crazy. And she did. And now, look, she's Congresswoman in Pennsylvania. So this is why we wanted to come together, was to start sharing these stories. And then it evolved as, yes, these are unique stories about women running for office, but there's also some of the challenges that are still in existence. We wanted to address those as well, to provide, some lessons to take away. Because the truth is, running for office and putting together a campaign and becoming a leader in that capacity is got the same set of skill sets that you need in everyday life to be a leader and run businesses or run a program at American University or pull together your community to make change. And we wanted to give women the tools and some stories along the way to do just that.
Yeah, and you make the point in the book too that if you can ask for a donation, you can ask for a raise. And so, yeah, as you were saying, a lot of that what you all talk about in the book is certainly transferable to succeeding really in any career. Christina, what are your thoughts on that and some lessons that you've taken away? You haven't run for office, but you've certainly had an incredible career in politics.
Yeah, I mean, I think for many women, we look at things and we go in and we get to work and we do things.
Yeah.
But we see men run in and they, the systems are built for men. They are often built to lift up men. It's why Emily's List got started, right? Was because, even in the Democratic Party, the establishment kept lifting up the men and the women were sort of fighting for scraps. And one of the things that I've always heard from Stephanie and that we've found to be true is that if you're willing to say, I need to learn, can you teach me? And you're willing to learn and you're willing to work hard, that's what you need, right? You need a goal, you need a desire and something that drives you, and you need the willingness to learn and work hard. And that applies in so many things. There's not a magic playbook where somewhere those men know more than I do. And what we saw after Trump's election was women coming out and saying, I need to be a part of the solution, right? There are problems in my community. This guy's going to make it worse. How do I fix this? And a lot of them raised their hand to say they wanted to run. And so, at Emily's List, under Stephanie's leadership, we built out our training department, kind of put it on steroids, right? We built this Run to Win program and tried to deal with all of these women coming in. And in doing so, realized these are good lessons for women writ large to remember. And it doesn't mean you're always, just because you work hard, you're always going to win. But it does mean there's a path to making change. And that's something that Stephanie always, and I get to see Stephanie give a lot of speeches and a lot of Canvas kickoffs. And the thing that she always says is, you don't have to run, but you have to think about, you either have to think about it or you have to go help a woman who is. And this, we thought, would be a good place for people to learn how to do that, whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, and you all don't necessarily sugarcoat it. And like you said, it's not always an easy or a quick path, right? You all write in the book, Stephanie, that folks call you Coach Stephanie because that's an important title for you in front of your name, because you're encouraging people, but you're also being honest with things that they need to do.
I mean, for anybody who has done something challenging for the first time, you have to learn the skills, you have to practice. And that is not always easy. I mean, what women, it doesn't even matter, candidates go through, let's just go to the basics.
Yeah.
You're going to have to fundraise. You're going to have to sit on the phones for hours, making phone calls, asking first your friends and family, and then strangers for money, which I would just say is an investment in the future of this country. But you've got to make those asks. You've got to go through that process. And honestly, you got to find your story and how you do that. And practice makes you better and better. And we see that all the time. For so long, Emily's List would see women who would come in after we begged them to run, by the way. I mean, we've been around for 35 years. The first 30 were like, please run. Now they're like, finally, we got volume. Not enough, by the way. So if anybody, like Christina says, I do, don't say never. We need women to run for office. And even if it's not today, don't say never, because that's really important and can be for any office. But for so long, women would come in and go, well, I just don't know enough about my district or the policies or this or that. And I'll be like, by the time you learn all that stuff, first off, you're going to know more than anybody else in the Congress or the legislature, because trust me, those guys do not know all that stuff.
Right.
Like, they do not. You learn it on the way. You just like jump in and learn it on the way, and breaking sort of that mindset, which I will say we still have to break. I would like to say, okay, 2016, that fixed it. They saw somebody who wasn't, I would argue, not qualified becoming president of the United States. Therefore, I can do that. You think that would be enough? No. Our women who are getting ready to run have a million questions because they want to know. And I'm like, okay, we will help you, but you're going to practice. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn these skills. You're going to get better as you go. But the most important thing really is to like go and do the on-the-job training, because that's the best training of all.
And I think, just to jump in, I think one of the things that we do, and that you note from the book, Betsy, because Stephanie is a coach, she is a cheerleader, you know, she gets everyone revved up. Like I said, she loves a canvas kickoff, but she also is honest. Like, we don't believe in telling people this will be easy, you know, it's no problem. There aren't challenges that women face that are different. There, you know, we tell it like it is, but also tell you that it's not impossible. Just because you might be the first woman that this, you know, community has elected, just because you might be the first person in this space who looks like you, doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you need to go in with your eyes open. And that's one of the things, I mean, one of the chapters in the book is about asking yourself the tough questions and being honest about the answers. It doesn't, you know, some of it's just knowing. I know that it's going to be hard because I have kids and I have to deal with this. I mean, goodness knows how many parents are dealing with this with COVID, right? But it's thinking about, okay, so I know that. So how much time can I devote, or what do I do, or, you know, how do I deal with that? It's something that we think, and we think that's true of anyone who wants to make a change, is you have to think through those questions, answer them honestly, and make a plan.
But on the flip side of that, when you're trying to recruit someone or, you know, talk up, you know, potentially getting in the race, there are obviously concerns that women have about, you know, not running, right? And so you all explore a little bit in the book that, you know, some of these reasons or excuses are really kind of covering up for this lack of confidence that so many women have, and we all have at different times in our life, right? Yeah, this sort of notion of self-doubt. So how do you get people over that hump?
Well, like Stephanie said, Donald Trump helped. You know, there's a
right. Christina's like, that guy, guy. Okay.
Yeah. So I got this, right? He certainly helped, but I think, and we believe, I think, at Emily's List, every woman who runs, and particularly every woman who gets elected, helps the next woman in showing her what she can do, in showing her that, you know, if you saw today, there was a viral clip of Katie Porter giving the business to a pharma CEO. Katie Porter is also a single mom of 3 kids, right? And she's brilliant, but she also, you know, struggled with some of that herself. How am I going to do this? And we see that across the board. And so hopefully they look at those women and they see people like me can do this. But also we talk them through, like, here's the way you do it. You build a support network, right? You know, learn what you need to know, and you learn on the way. You listen to people. You learn how to tell your story. And we try to hold their hand all the way through. And I hope that this book, with Stephanie's advice, will hold people's hand a little in whatever way a book can do that, I guess.
I was going to say, Christina brought up a good point about the network of support, because what does happen, and I think for so many of us, particularly women, I don't want to discount that men do some of this too, but particularly women, like, we really lean on our girlfriends, and you need your truth teller. And we talk about this in one of the chapters, is like, you kind of need your truth teller who's going to give you the harsh reality, but you also need your like security blanket, like who's going to like give you a hug, even if you messed up, right. And just like thinking about who's in that circle around you, because here's the thing, there's going to be bad days, and there's going to be days where, like, if you have kids, you're going to get asked, well, what are you going to do with the kids if you win? Like, still today, that still happens. Or if you don't have children, why don't you have children?
Right.
Are you going to have children? Did you make a decision about not having children? Like, and then again, it's a relatability problem that we can get through all those things because the questions come all the time. But that, if you hear that enough and you're also worried about your kids, you're out campaigning and you're missing the third soccer game this month, which is hard, which, by the way, every working mother is going through that same struggle. And now it's even more challenging under this pandemic. But we talk about that because you just have to, right, Christina's right. You need a network and you need a plan. Like, how are we going to get through this? What is the network of people that are going to help with the family? But then there's also other things to factor in: economics.
Right.
Can you afford to do this? We need to talk about those kind of things as well. So we do have some kind of like tough talk.
What is the advice, though, that you give? I mean, we're in this very nasty political climate, and you all have some advice about having thicker skin.
I'll first, because I know I spent a lot of time as a researcher, so I was one of the people sort of poking away at that thick skin. Yeah. I think we tell them a few things. One is to have that support network, right? Know who's gonna be helpful and who's not in those situations when you get attacked. To figure out a plan for how to deal with those attacks, with that criticism. To think through, what are you going to do? What's out there? And some of it is doing self-research. As that, Stephanie and I both worked on campaigns where, a piece of it is just knowing what's out there and knowing what's coming, if you know what's coming, you can better prepare for it and you can sleep better at night and know that you've got a plan. I mean, we are planners at heart. Campaigners usually are, right? And so a piece of it is having some thinking into what's coming and some thinking into how you'll respond, and then just doing the work and knowing, I think a part of it, and in our polarized environment, it's so important, knowing that you can't please everyone, that there are people who are going to come at you and it's going to be unfair and it might be gendered and it might be racist and it might be all of the things, and understanding why you're doing it is an important part of that.
Christina, I wanted to ask you too about sort of this generational shift over the past decade and how we view women candidates. What are your thoughts on how women candidates are judged now versus maybe even just 10 years ago?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories when Stephanie and I were working on the book, we talked about MJ Hagar, who's one of our Senate candidate in Texas. She's amazing, a groundbreaker in so many ways. MJ has a lot of tattoos, and she actually has recently been attacked on them.
I saw that.
She made an amazing ad about her tattoos because she got the tattoos to cover up shrapnel wounds. And Stephanie and I talked about, Stephanie, you reminded me that you once told a male politician to cover up his tattoos, and and now we have a woman running an ad on it, and what we know is women are judged more for their appearance. Women are judged more for getting emotional. Women are judged more for talking about, men can have potential, women have to admit it, right? So if you express that you don't know something or that you're not working on things, I think Stephanie and I have worked in politics long enough to remember when we told women not to acknowledge that, right? Or not to get emotional, not to talk about your own story, talk about the voters' stories. And that's changing. And we made a big leap forward in 2018 when we had women come out and say, here's who I am. And, I like to say it's one of the only good lessons we got from Donald Trump's campaign, which was that voters want someone who doesn't seem like a politician, but seems like they're telling it like it is. And I think Stephanie and I would both argue Donald Trump isn't actually telling it like it is, but they don't expect you to agree with them all the time. They expect you to be truthful in the sense of showing all yourself.
Yeah, and that's sort of the authenticity, right?
Yeah, and women are judged far more harshly on that. But what we're seeing in a generational shift is that they're kind of willing to risk it and putting more of themselves out there, and that's helping every woman who runs.
It does, and it's helping those that are currently serving. It's a freeing situation because I think about the generation of my mother who's no longer with us, but I think of like the baby boomers and even the generation above, the silent generation. those two groups of women really had the Hillary Clintons, okay, of the world, right? She is the same age as my mom would have been. And these are women who had to be perfect.
Right.
Who had to look the role. I mean, I remember even coming into DC in the 90s, and there was a definite uniform for women. Like it was a, perfect, like very blah, no colored suit if you were working in politics. And we could wear pants by then, so that was a win.
And if you were a Republican, you had your pearls on, right?
You had the pearls, but that came in the 90s. Like you could throw the pearls on if it was, it was a very, like, you had to fit in the box and you didn't go outside. So all those women who broke down so many doors for us, for me, were trained like every single day by the culture that that's what they had to do. And then all of a sudden, this crew comes in. This like rowdy, I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm going to show you my tattoos. I'm going to walk in with my backpack. I remember
I'm going to wear my member pin on a necklace because I'm taking holes in my dresses.
Right? On my very fancy dresses. I remember when I first started at Emily's List. I don't even know if I put this in the book, but somebody, I will not say who, but a former member of Congress told me that I should not be seen carrying a purse, that staff should always carry my bag.
How?
I'm like, no, that's just not how I roll. I grew up in Montana and I'm not comfortable with that. And like, that's just not going to happen. But there was these like set of rules that were really strict. And then you've got sort of the beginning of I feel like the Gen Xers of us are kind of like, wow, this is happening. And we're like the bridgers of the like bridging this. And this next generation's coming in and they're like, no, we're going to do this. And I'm going to say one other thing, and I just started kind of thinking about this. There's one person who I think has broken the rules and doesn't get enough credit, and I think it's Speaker Pelosi, because she has a what I call sort of a feminine power that was very different than the very boxy, I'm going to be dressed kind of like a dude, even though, so I kind of blend in. She's never been like that. She's always worn the heels. She's always like owned it.
She's got the coat and the sunglasses.
She's owned it. And she's owned it. And she's owned it also in soft power. That is really powerful. Like she knows when people's birthdays are. She keeps track of everything. And I think it's a real testament to her and a good lesson for all of us is that there are different kinds of women leaders. And that's really important too. And that's why you got to bring yourself into this. And that's what we're hoping we're encouraging in this book, is that you got to bring in who you are, because you're really awesome and people will vote for you.
You also spend some time talking about, if you're putting yourself forward and then you have a loss, right? How do you kind of pick yourself back up from that? Because the fact of the matter is, it usually takes more than once to run to, win an office. That's not unusual. And so how do you encourage women to actually kind of get back out there after they've experienced some sort of setback or a loss?
Well, Christina, you want to talk? Because I want to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the change I'm seeing. So I'm going to talk about that because there's something going on right now.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite things about Emily's List is that we want to be with someone from the beginning of their career all the way through. And so, if you gave her a couple cocktails, Stephanie would tell you the plans she had for many members of Congress that they probably don't even know yet, right? And many state legislators and all of those, right? We are constantly thinking of what's next. And I heard it over and over again when I first started Emily's List that a loss is just a step on the journey, right? It is not the end. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And what we're seeing from our women is that some of those losses actually made them into the leaders they are. You look at a Tammy Duckworth, who lost her first race for the House, a close race. She lost it. She ended up working in both the Illinois and the federal VA, where she was able to take her experience and build some important other experience and then run again and win and then become a senator. And now she's out there every day fighting on a variety of issues, but certainly veterans issues. And we have some women who run again. We have some women who run for different offices. We have some who turn their, we look at Stacey Abrams, and hard to call it a loss, right? Like, we believe Stacey should have won that. But Stacey turned it into Fair Fight and Fair Count, which are hugely important organizations, and said, I'm still out there, right? Like, I'm going to still do this work. And, we saw that in Luba Gretchen Shirley, and, lots of our women who go and do things and take that loss and keep powering through. We think it's something that so many women do, but it's important. It's rare when you have something where on one day people judge you, right? And you win or you lose.
Right.
The weird thing about elections, and it's hard not to take that as I have lost and therefore I am unworthy, right? And so I know Stephanie really wanted this to be an important part of the book, to remind people that that's just one step. Like, nobody wins everything. You just don't. Whatever the win and loss, whatever you're counting, we all have setbacks, and keep going.
Yeah, and the other piece of this, and the change that I'm seeing, is when I first started at Emily's List. I've been president of Emily's List over 10 years now, and those early years, we have a belief that win or lose, you're going to hear from us right away, because we want to start talking about what's next, whatever the win or loss is. That's just how we roll, and that's the deal with everybody. And I remember the early years of my tenure where it was really, really challenging to get women to step up and run for a second try. It happened, and they were really good. And honestly, they're almost always significantly better candidates the second go around.
Right.
Why? Because you've experienced it. You learned all these lessons. I'm like, you just learned all the lessons. You're like, I use them now. You're a pro. I'm like, look at your first speech and then look at your last speech of the election and the campaign season, and tell me you're not a totally different candidate. So that was always part of the give and take, and just really trying to keep those folks in the process.
Yeah.
But in this, after 2018, I know, and it was funny, it took me a little bit, because we went through the process, and some of our calls immediately, like right away, were like, oh no, I'm running again. Like, we got to start planning.
So you didn't even have to do the pep talk.
I was like, but I'm always like, okay, but there is a grieving process. So I don't care who you are. And I said, I'm going to call you back in a month, or somebody from Emily's was going to call you back in a month and see how you're doing. Because even with that energy, because you're running on adrenaline, you win or lose, you're like, your adrenaline's way off the charts. I was like, we're going to talk to you in another month and then like reconfirm this. And folks grieved. They do. It is a loss. I mean, it really is. And it's a really complicated loss, because particularly for our federal races, or any campaign where you were advertising a lot, whether it was on TV, digital, or in the mail, where voters saw you a lot.
Right.
What ends up happening to you after you lose is you walk into the school, or you walk into the store, or you walk into the hair salon, or wherever, and people come up to you and they're like, we're so sorry you lost, and I voted for you, and you're just like the best. And all of a sudden your job is to comfort them while you're grieving your loss. Like, that is basically what happens for like months. So it's not an easy process, but it actually kind of makes you an even better second candidate in a way, because you're like, I can deal through this. I can work through this. But what happened after 18 is folks were like, we're running. And so you've got folks like Carolyn Long, or Gina Ortiz-Jones, or Betsy Dirksen-Longden. Marie Newman. I mean, the list just keeps going on. And there was no like negotiation or begging, or they were like, we're in, let's go. And that was really, really cool. And I hope that continues. And I think it will. I think we've got a sea change moment here, where women realize that they're the solution to getting us through the many crises that this nation is facing.
So we want to take a couple of audience questions, but before we do that, you just mentioned a few of them, but what other women are out there in sort of your women to watch category? I know it would probably take you 3 hours to go through a lot of math, but what are some of the most exciting races for those of the political junkies of the world should be watching?
So we don't have favorites. We love them all.
We
There
do
are
not
so
have-
many of them.
Yeah.
Very good, Christina. Very good.
But I'm a North Carolinian, and so I'm just going to say
Yeah, you're a ground zero of politics right now.
we got. I know ground zero. We've got a ton of ads and a ton of great women running. We can flip the House and Senate here in North Carolina with some really great women. We have a great candidate in Pat Timmons Goodson. She was a former Supreme Court justice in North Carolina. She's awesome. But I know, Betsy, that your daughter is in Texas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, Texas is ground zero for where women are going to. I mentioned MJ Hagar in that Senate seat.
Right.
We have 5 women running in suburban districts who can really flip red seats. We've got Gina Ortiz-Jones, Candace Valenzuela, who's a young mom and would be the first Afro-Latina in Congress. We've got Lulu Sekeli. We've got Seema Longivardian. And then we've got Wendy Davis, who you may remember from her filibuster. You know, those are all women who could flip seats and are doing amazing and polling. I mean, the Texas is real, y'all. It's burning blue. We're going to get it.
I mean, we think we might get the state house in Texas. This is happening. It's moving.
It's exciting.
It's really great. It's really great. I'm so glad you brought up the Texas women, Christina, because I just think that is such a huge group. And Jean Ortiz-Jones is one of those, like, of course I'm going to run again. I need a little time off and then I'm going to go. And she jumped right back in. And we also, I was going to say, there are so many great candidates. And you can tell when you look at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's red to blue list, that grouping where they think there's the best shot to pick up races, 80% of those candidates are Emily's List women this cycle. And there's a reason for that. They're like, these brave women like stepped up. They knew that this was going to happen. And I want to just like the Texas piece of this is really important for this election, because we'll talk a little bit about this particular election. These are 5 seats that we did not pick up in the wave of 18. That is how fast these suburban districts are changing in this country. And these Texas districts are perfect examples. And they're changing because women voters in those districts in particular are really fed up with the chaos. They want folks who are focused on healthcare and education. You know, these are women who are trying to figure out how to balance life and their kids in COVID. Right. There's no leadership. And I have never seen, and I don't know if Christina would agree, I've never seen an area like these suburbs shift as fast as I have in the last 4 years. It's really something. And you look at the Philly suburbs where we've got another opportunity to pick up a seat. I mean, it's just in New York City. You know, I know everybody thinks everything is blue in New York City. It is not all blue. And we actually have 3 really good pickups. 2 are in the metropolitan area. In New York, 1 with Nancy Goroff, and New York 2 with Jackie. And I just went,
Gordon.
Thank you, Jackie Gordon. I was like,
Goroff and Gordon, it's right next to each other. So.
They're literally right. Yes. And they're both like in the hunt to win those races, and just fantastic candidates. And we have an upstate race as well in New York 24. So all of these things that are, but what's amazing is we're talking about House seats that we didn't pick up in 18 when everybody's like, oh, the Democrats had this huge wave. No, these are all coming online now in 2020. Right.
And I will say, our digital team would kill us if we didn't mention, you can get all of our endorsements on emilyslist.org. So you can find everybody we've endorsed, literally hundreds of women all across the country.
I know, did we cross over 700 yet, Christina, on the legislature?
I think
Not
so.
quite.
Yes, I think that's right.
We are deeply invested in the legislatures too, and it looks like about almost, if not over 700 women at the legislative level.
What do you all think the impact just over the last week since RBG passed away has been? As young women, I think especially when you see so many of them, and she sort of transcended that generational component, and so many young women were inspired by her. And then, you know, the debate over now what's going on in the court. what kind of impact do you see that having on the election?
Yeah, I'll start. It's just hard. I mean, part of it is just heartbreaking, and I feel like we're none of us are going to have time to grieve this extraordinary woman who literally let's face it, the three of us would not be sitting here having this conversation on Zoom if not for Ruth Bader Ginsburg and everything she did as an attorney and then a judge and a justice. I mean, what she has done to open up opportunities for women in this country among so many other groups. There really aren't any words, and I don't go out very much. I'm very quarantined in my condo, but I couldn't not go to the Supreme Court on Saturday night after she passed for that vigil, and I did try to stay socially distanced with my mask on, and I did do all of that. It was a sight to be seen because it was so many young women and older, to be honest. And it was just a really beautiful thing. So sorry, I just wanted to say that about her because she deserves that moment, and she's such a loss to our nation. So what does it mean, though? Is I think what we're going to see here is like just a little more gasoline on the fire of women who were already riled up and ready to go, particularly young women. I have believed, and we at Emily's have believed, that this election could have a historic turnout in general. That means a historic turnout of women. The electorate in battleground districts in 2018, we saw got up to 54%. The electorate was 54% women. Just think about that. It could be 55 or more in some places this go around. So women are really going to drive this election, and her loss, and then us likely losing the court, and what that could mean, and likely would mean for the Affordable Care Act and for Roe v. Wade is life-altering for millions and millions. So that's just my perspective. But Christina.
Yeah, and here's what we know from polling, right? We know that a majority of Americans believe that the next president should decide who this justice is. We know that a majority of Americans support the protections provided by the Affordable Care Act, and we know that a majority of Americans support Roe v. Wade. And the clearest and Donald Trump has promised to, one, he's violating the first thing by not having nominated Amy Coney Barrett. He has also promised that he wants to overturn, he is literally suing to overturn the Affordable Care Act, and he wants to overturn Roe, and has said that he will look at justices who will do that. And so we know what he wants. We also know that here's why we know that both sides know that that's true. Last night in the debate, you heard Joe Biden talk about how he was putting Roe at risk, and Donald Trump tried to pretend he wasn't. And, that goes against everything he said in the past, but it just shows that he knows he's on the losing side of that. And, Americans want women to be able to make their healthcare decisions. And, there are debates around, different specific issues, but they support Roe overwhelmingly. And that's something that is now at risk. And we think, as Stephanie said, that women are going to hear that and they're going to come out. It's going to motivate them.
Yes.
We have a couple questions here, so let me get to a few of those. Jessica Francis is asking, she says, what is Emily's List doing to encourage women of color in particular to run for office?
Oh, and it is a critical component of the work that we are doing. In fact, we are at about 40% of our legislative, I just said we crossed about 700. 40% are either women of color or members of the LGBTQ community. And we are really proud of that. That is an active recruitment that we're working on with a great diverse staff that is going into all of the different communities across the country. We also are increasing our partnerships with organizations like Black PAC and Collective, just to think about the expansion of getting more Black women elected. And we've got some fantastic, we're talking about Jackie Gordon in New York too. and Pat Timms Goodson in North Carolina 8. We also have Desiree Timms in Ohio, Joyce Elliott in Arkansas 2. Arkansas 2 in play, Little Rock. I'm telling you now, watch that race. It is absolutely in play. And it's because these really extraordinary women, Black women, are stepping up to run, and we are there to get the resources behind as many of them as we can, because we're not just trying to get this. It's not just about women. It is about diverse women and diverse perspectives. We want our government to look like our country, which means we need to be intentional and race forward when we're thinking about our recruitment and support of candidates. And you're going to see more and more great women of color coming up the ranks, and they're going to wow the world. I have no doubts. And Kamala Harris is doing it right now, inspiring another generation of women who are going to step up and run.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of the Kamala impact? Just for young women to see that. I mean, I always think it pays dividends for years, but just curious of what your impression of that is. I
mean, Emily's List has been with her every step of the way. We were with her at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. And so we were thrilled. I mean, what a great choice, right? Yeah. She brings this incredible experience, this varied experience. We watched her hold the Trump administration accountable. We've watched her bring voice to issues that didn't get enough attention. She and Lauren Underwood talking about Black maternal deaths, for example, and raising issues, the Justice and Policing Act and things like that. But also, it's important, like, if you can see it, you can be it, is something that we take to heart. And it matters for little girls to be able to look and see someone like them on the ticket and hopefully in the White House, right? And so we think, what a fantastic choice that I mean, we loved when Joe Biden said, "I'm going to nominate a woman," we thought, great, we got a long list for you. Because we do. And we did. And, it was, and so we loved the debate amongst the different women, because we were like, good, let's talk more about Tammy Duckworth. Let's talk more about, Karen Bass, and let's lift up these women. But Kamala, she's a phenomenal campaigner. She can, I like to say, like, I remember watching her one day where she bounced from like Rachel Maddow to Andy Cohen to Watch What Happens Live, did them both these, right? Like, she's a great campaigner. We know she'll be great in office. And she's inspiring and groundbreaking, and we need more of that in this country. So, we're thrilled. We were not surprised to see all the money they raised when she got named, to see all the great press. But we're here to help lift her up some too.
How has she grown as a candidate? I mean, you mentioned that you all have worked with her for her political career. How have you seen her grow?
So I gotta say, a lot of raw talent in that woman, like a lot of raw talent. So when she was DA, she started as district attorney in San Francisco. Huge deal. She has an intensity which she has not lost in getting things done. And then it became attorney general, of course, in California, and continued that place. I will say, in my experience, I worked most closely with her. Emily's List has been with her, but I was part of her transition from attorney general to the United States Senate. And so that's a very, very different job. Yeah. And I had a long conversation with her about whether or not she should run for that open Senate seat. This was Barbara Boxer was retiring. We, as Christina mentioned earlier, we often have grand plans for women, even though they don't necessarily know. And one of those grand plans was Kamala Harris as governor, because you often go from attorney general to governor. That's a very typical. And for women, for a long time, it was one of the best springboards to the governorship, because electing women at the executive level still more challenging, unfortunately, than the legislative level, and having sort of the law background or coming out of like an auditor position helped. So it was governor, but I was like, okay, the Senate seat is open. Like, right?
So timing matters. Yeah.
So timing, timing matters. And she was really, obviously thoughtful about it, took her time. And I was like, bird in the hand or destiny primary in that governorship. Like, we know what's coming. And obviously, that's what happened. She ran. But I bring that story up because when she as she was making that decision and then jumped into the Senate, what I could see is the speed and the confidence of making decisions even faster. And I think that's exactly what, or at least one of the great things that Joe Biden saw in her, is someone who can look at a complicated problem, make a decision, stick to it, move forward. And I think that she's only gotten better and better in the Senate at those kind of things. In the Senate, you have to deal with everything, including, she's on the, do I have this right? She's on the Intelligence Committee or the Foreign? I'm sorry, I just went. She's on one of the.
Is she on Judiciary too?
She is on Judiciary.
She is on Judiciary, but she also does non-domestic foreign work, which is something you don't do as Attorney General. Right. Or you don't do as a DA. So she's had to throw herself into something she didn't know. She's a studier. She's like a lot of them, like got to get an A on the test, kind of. She's definitely done. But with a quicker speed. And I love that because that's what you're going to need. I mean, they've got a lot of crises to deal with. And I think they're going to be such a great partnership as long as we get them there to work together, because you're going to need, it's all hands on deck. Like, this is a big operation to fix what's going on in this country.
Here's a question from Caitlin. She says, in your opinion, what is the biggest barrier for women to run for office, and how can we support women and encourage women to run?
Sammy, I'm going to quote you on this because I do think it's important. Our political system was set up for rich old white guys, right? It was set up, we talk to candidates about the fact that, well, I've been told I have to quit my job immediately and I can't quit my job, right? Even Congress, at least pays decently, right? And you usually have to maintain 2 residences, and there's a lot of expenses that go with it. But some state legislatures pay nothing. And so you have these women who are trying to campaign full time while also often doing their jobs. And so one of the barriers that we see is the ability to sort of live your life and do a campaign, whether that's to be able to afford to run, to afford to cut back your hours or work around. We have a lot of candidates. Johanna Hayes is one of them, who worked in education and would literally after school hours then go knock doors and couldn't do things until then. We see that. And so it's one of the reasons that we've often talked about. It's okay. Like, we have candidates who have sued the FEC to allow themselves to make childcare a campaign expense, right? We have candidates are allowed to pay themselves a salary, but sometimes they get punished for it by their opponent. And we think, well, you shouldn't have to be rich to run for office.
And that's just for federal office, right? Though that's a lot of legislators, don't do that, right?
Yeah. There are some serious structural problems here that are hard to overcome for women and candidates of color, both women and men. And it is the financing. And I don't mean there's the campaign financing. Everybody always thinks it's about the campaign financing, which is a lot. But it's about the financing of your life. Can you still
pay your mortgage?
Right, exactly. Can I still have health care? If I give them my job, where am I going to get my health care? And then if you're running in for the legislature, where we're so desperate, for leadership, and I'll tell you, if things like the Affordable Care Act fall apart because of the court, or Roe goes, all that means is it's going back to the states, and these legislatures are going to make these decisions, and we're going to live in a country that you're going to have a different set of rights depending on which zip code you're in, which we're close to that anyway. And then it will be the law of the land that it will be different. So though we need women in those legislative seats now, but we've got legislatures that literally pay nothing or have per diems or pay travel costs. And I know it's unpopular to say it, but if we are asking Americans to give up so much of their time and their privacy which we are,
right,
to serve their communities, then we have to make sure they've got enough money to live and survive to do that. This is not about getting rich. I'm telling you, these folks they're not getting rich. In fact, it's costing them a lot of money. I mean, I will say, I used to, prior to being at Emily's List, I worked for Senator John Tester out of Montana. And if many of you know him as now the senior senator of Montana, he's a dirt farmer in Montana. And he and his wife managed that farm. The best year they ever had on income prior to being in the U.S. Senate was probably about $45,000. They went without health care at times in the 80s. But even when he got this job in the Senate, and then they have a great marriage. They are deeply in love, and they traveled back and forth together. But they had to always pay for Charlotte's ticket.
Yeah.
Like, so not only do you have to get
an easy commute either, because then you've got to just fly. There's no direct flight and fly. And
and it is expensive to fly to Montana, and they were doing it every week and still do to the best of their ability, plus having a place here. I'm like, don't cry me a river. I know that they're getting paid more than most Americans, but they also just have a lot of costs, and they give up everything, including their privacy, to do these jobs.
Mm-hmm. And as Ayanna Pressley says, I mean, this is the point: is if we don't make it so that people, Ayanna says the people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, and the idea that our government works better when people who understand what government can do and what they need to do are running it. Otherwise, we make it so it's only available for wealthy people, and that feels like not a great way to run our government.
Right.
And we lose recruits all the time. It's heartbreaking when we lose a recruit because she just can't afford to do it.
Right.
That is not the democracy that we should be building.
Here's a question for Julie about some of those local races that you were talking about, not just state legislature races, which I know you all do some work with, but she's asking, how do you work with women running for the first time in much more local county or municipal types of races?
Well, so Stephanie created our Run to Win program. One of the things that we do is we invite people to join what we like to call the happiest place on the internet. Although this is a pretty great one. But we have our Run to Win Facebook group. It's a private group, and in it we've got thousands of women running for the first time. We do periodically where we'll have staffers jump on and offer advice to people. Sometimes, women find each other, and you'll see people say, I'm having trouble dealing with events at this time with my kid's school, or, things like that. They provide each other support. They become accountability partners. And through that, we offer things like webinars. Our digital director, our digital VP, and I did one on rapid response, right? We do some on fundraising. We try and offer trainings to bigger groups of people so that they have a better understanding and have resources. We have a training center online that we offer people. So there's worksheets and things like that. We don't have the staff capacity to dig in on every campaign the same way we do on some of our races. But we want to try and offer those resources as broadly as we can, so that, because those local races matter so much.
Mm-hmm. And that training center has so many great lessons. You can literally work your way through lesson by lesson on how to run for office, including just some templates. I was like, we're not trying to get to Mars here. Like, they're just like pieces of the puzzle. You just got to get them and put them together. And we can give you the pieces, and you're gonna have to put them together. You got to do the work. But the training center is a great place to go to get so much of that information, and it is really designed with those local races in mind, because part of the starting point is like, what are the laws around that race? What is the fundraiser? What are the fundraising rules? What are the filing rules? You got to do a little homework yourself before you jump in, and it literally walks through all those questions.
I want to share with folks, I have one more question for you guys, but before we go, I want to share with folks what we have coming up on our Women on Wednesdays. Next week, we're doing Women on Thursday, which we hope you'll join us for, because we want to talk about the vice presidential debate, and have a feeling that will be much more productive than what we saw last night. We're going to have Candy Crowley, who moderated the debate in 2012, and she was the first woman in, I think, 20 some odd years to do that. Karen Finney, who is a great Democratic strategist, so she will be here along with Casey Hunt from NBC News, who is the Capitol Hill correspondent, and has covered certainly Kamala Harris for a while. So they will be here to kind of give us their analysis. And then the Wednesday after that, we are going to talk about gender and generation. So we'll talk with Nancy Leamon from AARP to talk about 50 plus women, and Ann Moses from Ignite will be here to talk about younger women. And then Dr. Melissa Deckman, who is chair of the political science department, does a lot of work in this area from Washington College. So that'll be on the 14th. And then the 21st, we are going to do essentially the Republican version of tonight with two women who are working with organizations to support Republican women running for office, Julie Conway from ViewPAC and Rebecca Schuler from Winning on Women. So we hope everybody will be able to join us for those. The registration you can find on our Crowdcast page here. So we hope you will sign up for that. But let me ask you guys, before you go, a quick question from Isabel. She says, are there any public figures that haven't reached out to Emily's List that you would like to see run for office? And I guess I would maybe say, is there some, like a dream candidate that you have out there that you really wish would throw her hat into the ring and run?
See, this is
I have one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's you.
Yeah.
What? You're Betsy.
One day.
Well, you've been talked about potentially for running for Senate, Stephanie, and you haven't done it.
I mean, you
can't leave yet. You can't leave for a long time, but eventually.
That's right. I've got a big job at the moment, and like I tell my candidates, you never say never.
Yeah.
So never say never. So thank you. That's very kind. I was going to just say about the question.
Yeah.
The truth is, you're looking at it the wrong way. It's that the pearls that you find in your communities, the women that have rolled up their sleeves to fix the school or to get the stop sign or to figure out the playground or to deal with the cleaning up of the river, those are the gems that you want to run and will rise to the very top. They are the ones that we're looking for. It's not a rock star, superstar, like fancy pants person. Yeah. It is a roll up her sleeves. She's already in there doing something. And the truth is, she probably hasn't even thought about running for office because she's too busy cleaning the river or getting the playground or something. And someone's got to say to her, you should run for city council. You should run for county commissioner. You should run for legislature. Because still, even though we've had now almost 60,000 women come to us wanting to run for office, still not enough.
Yeah.
A lot more offices in this country, and there's turnover all the time. So we need to keep going, and it's all of us need to keep our eyes open, and we need to say to our friends and colleagues and women like that who are doing the work, you should run. And then you got to say, I'll have your back.
See, this is why they call her Coach Stephanie. There you go. In action. Well, Christina and Stephanie, thank you both so much for being with us tonight, and good luck over the next couple of weeks. We will be watching some of your women that you mentioned, and we will hopefully see you guys soon. So take care, and thanks everybody for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next Thursday. Take care.
Okay, thank you.